Week 2 is in the books as All-American returns to Studio A as we are ready to break down Week 2 of college football, heading into a big Week 3 for the American Athletic Conference. Plenty to talk about with exclusive interviews and guests along the way. I'm Kyle Youmans alongside Morgan Uber. We've got plenty to get to because it was a big week in the American Athletic. We talk about 5 teams starting 2-0, 2 teams putting top 20 teams on the radar, pushing them into the fourth quarter. 2 conference wins for the military academies, but there's only one All-American podcast. Morgan, great to be back with you. Really excited about the week ahead because it's an opportunity really for a lot of these teams to kind of get back on the right foot.
Yeah, Kyle, great to be here with you. And I think the beautiful thing about sports, about football, right, is these teams that, didn't really do maybe what we hoped or expected them to do in week 2. They have an opportunity to bounce back, and it's all about how you respond. And talking with, coaches and players, so many of the conversations, sometimes these teams, you can learn more about your program from a loss than you do a win. And I think it's going to be really interesting, some of these big matchups we have here this week for teams to, go on the road and hopefully, get back in that win column. But yeah, looking forward to breaking down all of these matchups with you. Memphis at Florida State. This one's personal. Head coach Ryan Silverfield was under head coach Mike Norvell, now coaching at Florida State. That one definitely going to be interesting. And it kicks off our day at noon Eastern on ESPN. And then you get Tulane with another opportunity against a top 25 team, but this time has to go on the road to Oklahoma. But anything can happen. And again, I think this is one game that we're going to break it down. I certainly have high expectations for. And then to cap off the night, UTSA, definitely not the game they expected to have in week 2, and it doesn't get any easier for them to have to go up against Texas, a real contender here in this 12-team college football playoff era. There's no question about it after their rout against Michigan up in the Big House on Saturday.
Yeah, it really is 3 different motivations. When you look at Memphis, it's an opportunity to announce themselves as arriving on the scene in the real college football playoff conversation because they already have 2 big wins. They have an opportunity for their biggest win so far by going and beating Florida State. And we'll talk a little bit about that matchup later on. Does it still hold the same weight since the Seminoles are, of course, 0-2 coming off of a bye week and a chance now for them to try and get back on the right track? Tulane, they weren't able to finish off a 34-27 game and a loss against Kansas State at home. We'll go through that matchup as well and talk about it. And then UTSA, I think that's the stunner of the conference right now, the fact that they fall after beating Kennesaw State 28-16 in week 1, kind of a tough matchup there. They did not look great in that week 1 matchup. Then they fall 49-10 on the road against Texas State. Not a game, not a matchup you were looking forward to, but there's a lot that we're going to break down over the course of this All-American podcast. But I'm really excited about this next part, Morgan. We've got our first special guest of the day.
You and me both. We now have the pleasure to welcome in the Hall of Fame running back, Rene Ingoglia. You hear him on the call for ESPN. He was there last week for the Troy and Memphis game. And Rene, being there firsthand, you're in the room, getting to have those conversations with head coach Ryan Silverfield. We know these expectations for the Memphis Tigers, they're the highest they've been in this Silverfield era, but what maybe did you see that you didn't expect out of the Tigers here last weekend on the call for that game?
Yeah, I thought they played well. So offensive line guys, they got 5 new offensive linemen that are kind of in there. And that's the one position group that I think it takes time to gel. So I think they're going to get better and better as the season goes on. They have a new DC in Jordan Hankins who was there and who was promoted from within. And he's very aggressive. So I think defensively they brought a lot back. And then teams like Memphis, and you guys see this, they retain a lot, and then they fill some gaps with the transfer portal. And I think that's the best way to do it. You've seen teams try to overhaul their entire roster. I don't really think that's the way to go. But if you can retain the majority of your roster and then fill some pieces in through the portal, which they have. They got a linebacker. Tennessee's leading tackler last year, Elijah Herring, is a linebacker now with Memphis, and he fits in perfectly there. So I think they're in a really good position here going into this Florida State game.
Well, you mentioned transfer portal, and running back, I've got to ask what you thought of Mario Anderson. We talked about him so much at Media Day, the impact that we thought a South Carolina transfer and the value that he could add to this Memphis Tigers team. What stood out?
Well, even more value than I think Ryan Silverfield thought, because kind of they thought he was going to split the load with Sutton Smith, who got hurt in week 1. So it was Mario Anderson's show. He's got great contact balance. He's got that perfect build, I think, for a running back. About 5'9", 205 pounds. He kind of gets lost behind those offensive linemen. But he runs behind his pads. He runs with power, and he's got good speed as well and vision. So he's kind of got the entire package. So there's no doubt he is the lead back now for Memphis. And I think it's the dividends of running the ball with a quarterback like Seth Hennigan are huge. He's going to reap those benefits because, of course, we all know what Seth Hennigan can do. He's a prolific passer, 4-year starter. He's got really good receivers on the outside. So this is an offense, once again, when they get rolling, they can put up a lot of points. I think I said it this week, 29 straight games of 20 or more points. I mean, it's an offense that can put up points.
Now, that leads me into my next question, because whenever it comes to running backs, of course, you were a tailback in your own right. You know what it means to be dominant on the ground. But when it is a little bit of an experience and a little bit of a surprise going into the season of finding that running game, seeing the impact there, how much can that really open up a passing game as well? Because like you talked about, balanced offensive attacks are tough to stop. But with Hennigan, I mean, that's been an offense that's really relied on his arm over the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle, any defensive coordinator you talk to, and I know you know this, and I talk to him. I talk to him every week. I don't care how prolific the offense is, how good the quarterback is throwing the ball. They, to a man, will tell you we need to stop the run first, point blank. So if you can establish a running game, man, and then you got a passing game. And let's say the passing game really is maybe your best attribute as an offense, but boy, if you can get some sort of a running game, it's really a headache for defensive coordinators.
How good can this Memphis offensive line be? You talked about running behind the tackles and seeing Anderson take advantage of that. It really looked like this was a confidence boost going into week 3, going up against Florida State's defense.
The right guard really isn't close to its ceiling. And, when you talk to those guys, they love running the ball because they all like to run block, right? Fire off the ball. Yeah, their ceiling's high. I think they're excited about this game. They're right where they want to be going into this game against Florida State this week.
In terms of that matchup, Rene, what are you looking for? What are the keys of what Memphis needs to continue to do? I mean, at this point, they're in the driver's seat, I would say, for this game. They've got the momentum on their side, where Florida State, they seem like they're trying to figure it out.
That's the $1 million question, really. Falls on Florida State, not Memphis. I mean, Memphis is coming into this game where you thought they would be, okay? And I tell you, if you would have asked Mike Norvell, at the end of the season last year when they were undefeated, hey, guess what? In next season, you're going to be on a 3-game losing streak, and your old team's going to come in here. He would have been like, "Are you nuts?" But that's where we're at, because if you look at the bowl loss to Georgia, obviously, and now they start this season 0-2 out of the top 25. I mean, it's bonkers. But guys, that's college football. Mm-hmm. And so when I evaluate Florida State, there's a couple things. Everyone wants to talk about DJ Uiagalelei, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I can tell you this: it's not all on him. Now, he hasn't done anything to lose them games in those 2 games. Now, has he won them the games? No. But he hasn't done anything to lose them the game. Where they've lost those 2 games to start the season, it's interior line play on both lines of scrimmage. Offensive line that you just talked about for Memphis, they've underperformed for Florida State. They really have not gotten their running game going at all. And then the defensive line, that's all we heard is how good that defensive line of Florida State is, especially those defensive ends. Listen, they've been poo-poo. They just have. I mean, they have to have a gut check. I mean, they need to get at it. And I'll take it a step further. If the linebackers for Florida State haven't made plays, I think their secondary's fine. But because everything's out of whack in that defensive front, I think it's made that secondary a little frenzied. Yeah. But they're getting beat at the line of scrimmage. So, that's what I'll be watching, or at least looking when I watch the game back, because obviously I'm working next week. So, but to me, and then they just attitude-wise, they just kind of look like they're in a haze, like a shot. Like they look like a prize fighter that is, favored to win the championship and caught a couple left jabs and a right hook, and they're kind of stunned right now. So this will tell us a lot about Florida State, how they come out in this game this week.
So they are 7-point favorites. First part of the question is, does that surprise you at all? And then, of course, would a Memphis win on the road, still going to Tallahassee, which is not an easy place to play? I mean, week 1 was the first loss for Florida State at home since number 4 Clemson beat them a couple years ago at home. So do you still feel like this win would hold, a victory for Memphis would hold the same weight as it would, even with how Florida State has stumbled to this point?
I do. And so for a couple of reasons. One, you talk about, that Florida State's favored by 7. And then they started the season 0-2. I mean, if they were 2-0 and they got through their first 2 games, that line would probably be at least double that, right?
Probably,
but it's not,
yeah,
because of where they are. And the reason why I do think it still holds clout, one, it's Florida State, right? It's a blue blood. It's a Power 4 conference. And now they're like an injured animal, man, with their back against the wall. I mean, if you're Florida State, I mean, I live here in Orlando. I live in Central Florida. I know a ton of Florida State fans. My youngest daughter goes to college up there. They're all reeling as well. So Mike Norvell, that program's hearing it from everyone. So again, they're kind of like an injured dog. They need to come out and win this game. If Memphis, which they can do it, go in there to Tallahassee and make Florida State 0-3. Holy cow! The stadium's under construction, so there's a lot going on there. But if they go 0-3 and lose this game, the whole stadium may crumble.
Oh, man.
I was going to say, Rene, so I saw the tweet that you put out, pretty epic, of the 134 teams in FBS football. You hit number 98. Now, how many stadiums, how many different places have you called games? Have you done the math there?
So I put that out today. So I've been to 78 home stadiums.
Whew.
And then 10 neutral site or bowl stadiums, if
Wow.
you will. So the next thing is I didn't even delve into FCS at all. And I've done a ton of FCS games, so I'll have to get into that. But that's, guys, and you guys know this. That's one of my I'm very passionate about calling college football, but part of that is going to these stadiums, seeing these fan bases, going to these college towns. Like I'm going to Greenville this week, as you know. One of my favorite college towns, Dowdy-Ficklen Stadium, one of my favorite stadiums. But yeah, I love that. I've been to Doak Campbell a few times. So, but yeah, I just love it. It's I think the best part of college football.
Before we delve into your next matchup,
Yeah.
you have this upcoming weekend. I do want to ask, of all the, I mean, you've been to so many different places. There's always the argument, who has the best barbecue? So let's set it straight, because you've probably had all of it. Is it Texas? Is it Memphis? Is it Birmingham? Is it the Carolinas? Who wins?
Okay, I'm going to give you – we have a debate tonight, right, nationally? So I'm going to give you the political right now. They are all great. They're all delicious, and they're all a little different. And I will say, in Memphis, and I said it on the air, when in Rome, right? So you're going to get barbecue. Mm-hmm. We were suggested to go to a place called the Barbecue Shop. It was kind of, it's not a chain. It's kind of just hole-in-the-wall place, which I love. So I did get they're known for the dry rib, or dry of the rib, dry rib of the seasoning, but I did get the glaze on it, but it was very, very good. And that's one thing that I think you guys do as well. When you go to those places that are known for certain foods, it's like, okay, we got to do it, right?
Of course, yeah.
Well, that's the last time I was in Memphis. I got the barbecue spaghetti. Have you ever had that?
Oof.
So okay,
I did it.
So
straight
you
after.
Probably went to that. So this place, the Barbecue Shop, is known for that. So we all said, give it to us.
Why not?
Here's the deal, Kyle. Here's the deal.
It reminds me of Skyline Chili vibes. Ooh.
I'm 100% Italian.
Uh-huh.
Okay? I may not look it, but I am. My mom makes sauce. We call it sauce. Some people call it gravy every Sunday. My parents are still alive in their 80s.
Sunday gravy, baby. I married into an Italian family. I'm right there with you.
When the barbecue spaghetti came, it looked like Sunday sauce to me, right?
Oh.
So when I bit into it, it did not correlate with my brain, man. I just couldn't eat it. I just couldn't do it. Some people at the table loved it. I couldn't do it because it's like, you ever see those pastries where like they make an ice cream cake thing that looks like a hot dog?
Yeah.
And it just freaks you out. That's kind of how it was with me. It didn't taste what my brain
The wires weren't connecting, and
they were not connecting.
It wasn't making sense.
Were out of this world.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Let's talk about that next matchup you've got, though. As you make the trip out to Greenville, you have an opportunity to go see ECU this weekend. Of course, we're going to talk about ECU later in the show because that's a team that is 2-0 right now as well, playing some good football, especially on the defensive side. Been really impressed with what they've done defensively. What do you expect out of their matchup coming up?
Yeah, so, ECU last year, 2-10. And I talked about this in media days. To me, that was an outlier. It really was. They had good defense last year. They got zilch, 0 out of their quarterback play. Hence, transfer portal era, both those quarterbacks are gone. ECU brings in 2 new quarterbacks. Jake Garcia gets the start, transfer from Miami via Missouri. And that's the crazy thing today. It's like these kids have been 3-4 schools. Here's the thing with ECU. They're 2-0, so they've already matched their win total from last year. And Jake Garcia's thrown 7 interceptions, which is crazy. So I say that with he has to fix that, obviously. But, man, it is much better to fix issues like that with wins than it is losses. So I broke down their tape. And then defensively, I think ECU is in good shape as well. And then you bring in Appalachian State, in-state rival, obviously. Listen, you want to talk about an angry team. They played Clemson Saturday night. Clemson scored on all 8 of their first half possessions. And not only scored, but they scored touchdowns. It was 56-13 at halftime. So they were embarrassed. That is a proud team, a proud organization up there at Appalachian State. So they're going to come in every single hotel room because obviously, as Morgan, had to book travel. Every single hotel room in Greenville, North Carolina is sold out.
It's going to be rocking.
That tells me Appalachian State is traveling. I think there's already 48,000 seats sold. So I'm excited for this game. I think it's going to be a really good game.
Rene, one more before we let you go on East Carolina's side of things. Rajee Harris just has completely returned to form. I mean, again, another running back question for you. But as you watched the film on him, what really is impressing you?
He's 100% healthy this year, Morgan. So in the era of the transfer portal, he hasn't left. He's been there 5 years. A lot of people may not remember because it's a while ago. He was the 2020, and I know if I'm off on that year, you'll correct me, Morgan, the 2020 American Athletic Conference Rookie of the Year, okay? Had a decent 2021, got hurt, blew his knee out in 2022, came back last year in 2023. I had 2 of their games. I said, he was nowhere near 100% last year. He just wasn't. He's 100% this year. Mike Houston said in one of his shows this week that he told Rajee, listen, and they got 4 starters back on the offensive line, which is huge. Listen, you have to break some tackles, and if you do that, you will break long runs, and he did that last week against Old Dominion. He's going to be their featured back. They got a couple other backs there that are good. And again, quarterback play. The one thing I will say about Jake Garcia, even though he's got 7 interceptions, I love his mentality. He's got that gunslinger mentality. He's just like, I throw an interception, okay, goes back out there, and he's not gun shy. So he just has to pick and choose, not to force it in certain situations. One time he had a receiver open, he overthrew it. He did throw a really bad interception in the red zone. You cannot do that because you're taking points off the board. The game against Old Dominion, who, oh, by the way, only lost to South Carolina the week before by 4 points, is not that bad of a team. But it was a game that ECU should have won more comfortably on the road. So I'm curious and excited for this game. I think it's going to be a really tight game. So, yeah, I'm excited to get to Greenville.
Well, we're excited to hear you on the call, and as always, appreciate the time and all the knowledge you dropped with us. Love hearing you on these American teams, and we got to get you out to the other 25, 30 football teams that you have not covered in the FBS. We got to ask those ESPN bosses to make sure that you can check off all of those. Rene, appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I'm really excited about that ECU matchup. I really am. And here's why. I think App State, and he just talked about it, how proud of a program they are, how proud of a ball club they are. They've beaten ECU in each of the last 2 meetings, 2021, 33-19 in the Dukes Mayo Classic. You had 2013, 43-28 at Appalachian State. This is a chance for ECU to show that not only are they the real deal and improved to 3-0, Harris at 100% form, I think, is a complete game changer. If that's what Rene and all these other individuals and all these other experts are saying, I think we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah,
And I think this is going to be a fun Pirates team to watch.
I think his point that he made, these App State fans are going to be traveling. Daddy Ficklin Stadium is going to be rocking. There's no better environment, I think, in the American. We make the argument and power rank things. I do think they have one of the best environments there. But, I think this East Carolina team has a real shot of going to 3-0. And Rene brought it up. Rajee Harris being 100%. And one of the things, I did some deep research, Kyle, as we do, scrolling through the social media, on X, scrolling back, Rajee Harris every day since January 29th has tweeted out 1%. This whole theory of getting 1% better every day. And he suffers an injury and has worked to get back, and he is feeling as good as he's been. He feels 3 pounds lighter. Wow. First of all, not having to wear a brace on his knee, but he also said that the key has been eating broccoli. He said he feels great. He's been able to drop some body fat. Wow. And for a running back, I have some high expectations for him. And I think this East Carolina team is finally going to get this done and be able to beat App State in a rivalry game. This is a real rivalry.
I'm going to just start tweeting 1% and eating broccoli all day, every day. And I'm going to end up dropping weight, and I'm going to be better on this show than I ever have been in my entire life. I think we just talked about it a moment ago. As long as they take care of the football, they've had 10 turnovers in the first 2 weeks. They've had a lot of opportunities for Norfolk State, for Old Dominion to be closer than they probably should be, but they find a way to win at the end of the day. If they can take care of the football and ride the hands of Harris, ride the hands of the passing attack, which is still lethal just as much as they can run the football, I think they can throw it as well. ECU should handle business against Appalachian State at home and in front of their home crowd, in front of those 48,000 seats plus that are already sold, and they're going to be filled on Saturday. It's going to be a fun matchup. Excited to watch it on ESPN.
Yeah, Jake Garcia, 4 interceptions in the first half. He's not going to win a game against App State, doing that on Saturday, but should be a really good one.
Yeah, and there's a second key I kind of want to put in there about Garcia. He can complete a couple passes underneath first, get that passing game going within 10 to 15 yards. You don't have to go with a deep ball. A lot of times, Garcia's got tremendous arm talent. He can push it downfield. However, maybe the quick completions, make it simple on your quarterback. And that's a lot of what their offensive coordinator, Davis, does. And I think they do make it easy on Jake Garcia at times. But then other times they let it loose. And whenever they let it loose, that's when 4 interceptions can happen. I don't think they need to do that. I think they've got Anthony Smith. They've got Winston Wright Jr. Each had receptions of 25 yards or more down the field. Why not let them have some fun underneath the football, underneath that defense, and then let them run yards after the catch? It's going to be fun to watch. All right. How about the Tulane Green Wave?
Well, we talked decision-making, right? Yeah. And it was really one deciding factor, in arm talent, that Darian Mensah just not taking care of the football. But I think for a Tulane team, right, we can sit here, watch the film. It ends up being a one-score game. Tulane, no doubt, the better team the entire first half. Yeah. It comes down to the final play of the game, and there will be people on Twitter, on social media, mad about the call that the refs made. Yep. But if you're John Summerall and you're talking to that team after the game, you can't let the game come down to the refs deciding it. They had opportunities to get up by multiple scores, ended up having to kick field goals in the first half that could have been converted into touchdowns. So, it was really disappointing, I think, for Tulane, but it also taught me that this team can go toe-to-toe against anybody in the country.
Yeah. And they did so with a young quarterback. It was a battle of really talented young quarterbacks too. Avery Johnson on one side for Kansas State. I really liked what he brought to the table. And then Darian Mensah was tremendous in the first half. He showed up and looked like we had forgotten about quarterbacks of the past, right? Quarterbacks that have elevated to the NFL. No, Mensah's time is now, and he showed that. But then you get into the second half, and the game is on the line, and it's a one-possession matchup, and then all of a sudden, it's a lapse, it's a mistake here and there. You're up 17-10. You've got an opportunity. Then the game's tied at 20. You go down, you score. You've got a chance to put it on ice or tie it, and then it's just fumble, return touchdown, and then just like that, the penalties started racking up after that. I love Mensah. I love his talent level. You got to close. You got to find a way to close, and maybe he does so. They got a great opportunity this week against Oklahoma to go up and do it. This one's going to hurt, and it's going to sting for a long time because it was at home. You had a great atmosphere. I thought Tulane, that's the standard of the atmosphere that you should have in New Orleans for a football game. It was outstanding.
Yeah, Darian Mensah, let's just read his stat line here because it is so impressive. 19 of 29. He threw for 342 yards, 2 touchdowns, the 1 interception. But those passing yards, 342, were the second most in a game by a Tulane quarterback since 2019.
Yeah.
Michael Pratt, being that guy to do that.
Who was that?
Yeah, it was, Pratt was the one that actually told John Summerall, hey, this is your guy. This is the guy who can lead and command an offense and command a football team. We talked about it last week with Matty Hudak that Darian Mensah wasn't even a name that was on our radar when we were talking Tulane quarterbacks. It was Ty Thompson, it was Kai Horton, those two guys battling for the starting job. So for Darian Mensah to be in the position he's in, to see again that they went toe-to-toe against a Kansas State team that has big linemen, right? Like that's always the question, I think, sometimes between looking at, a Big 12 team in comparison or an SEC team in comparison to an American team.
Yeah.
Are the linemen, what is that battle of the trenches going to look like? And, for the most part, I thought Tulane on both sides of the ball, their line held up very well.
Yeah, and give credit to the defensive front as well for Tulane. They put pressure on Kansas State throughout the game. I know by the end of the day, the box score ended up looking pretty favorable in terms of rushing attack and back and forth for Johnson at quarterback. But I liked what they did defensively to keep them off balance. I thought the game plan was there. I want to ask you this. With Mensah, the reactions at the end, or not the reactions, but the falter at the end, do you think he was looking at the scoreboard? Do you think he was already dreaming of the reaction? I mean, and this is the offensive pass interference penalty that could have been a touchdown too. What happened down the stretch in your eyes?
I mean, again, I can't put the officials on full blast for this one because, like I said off the top, you can't let the game come down to the officials on the final play. But, I think just overall, this game showed Mensah's lack of experience, right? There were points of the game where the experience showed. I mean, the final play of the game actually ends, on an interception in the end zone. And, was that him forcing it, maybe a little bit? But at the same time, I think he did everything that he could to try to propel his team to a victory. And sometimes, the ball doesn't bounce your way. But the beautiful thing, like I said, Kyle, off the top of the show, Tulane has an opportunity to respond, against a top 15 team in the country. They go on the road to Oklahoma.
Yep.
And I'm going to say it right here, right now. Tulane is going to win this game.
Wow.
Tulane is going to
first
go
bold
into
prediction from
Northern
Morgan Uber.
Oklahoma, and they're going to take care of business. And we're going to circle this game, and it's going to, at the end of the season, when we're talking college football playoff, potential, Tulane is going to have a real shot to be that 12th team in the playoff, because of that win at Oklahoma. So, let's keep the receipts.
You hear that, social media? Clip it right now. I mean, here's the thing. Oklahoma looked unbeatable in week 1 against a struggling Temple team, but they didn't look unbeatable the week after that whenever they went up against a struggling Houston team. And it's not impossible for Tulane to follow up a near upset by following up with an actual upset. But here's the thing. Brent Venables will not let the Sooners be surprised by the Tulane Green Wave. Tulane did exactly what I think those around the program anticipated against Kansas State. Now Oklahoma's looking at that film and saying, okay, we cannot show up and sleepwalk through the first half. We cannot sleepwalk because Darian Mensah is the real deal. Tulane is the real deal. The running attack is a real deal. Their defensive front seven's the real deal. You cannot be snuck up on. I'm excited to see Tulane on the road in that environment because that was, of course, at home against Kansas State. I loved what they did there, but they have had road success in games like that before. Let's see what they can do against Oklahoma. I'm not going to make the call. You're going to let that be yours. I'm going to let you kind of sit on that wall. I think it'll be a close game.
Yeah, I'll take it. I mean, quarterback Jackson Arnold for the Sooners, he's an elite talent.
No doubt.
And it was interesting listening to the press conference that he did, after the game. It was almost as if Oklahoma had lost that game against Houston. I mean, that was just how down he sounded on his performance. And I mean, that offense completely stalled. And I think, we've seen it on film. The Tulane defense is a heck of a lot better than the Houston defense. So if they play anything like Oklahoma did, on Saturday against Houston, they're going to have a very tough time against the Green Wave.
And there was there's an interesting note here too, just kind of an outside source. I mean, there's a possibility that Tulane will have to practice outside New Orleans later in the week because of the impending tropical storm. Just possible, something that could play a factor on this game. And it's happened before. I mean, the last time that Tulane had played Oklahoma, they had to evacuate to Birmingham to practice, and the game was moved to Norman due to Hurricane Ida. And of course, that was a Tulane team that pushed, at that point, number 2 Oklahoma to the brink. 40-35 was that final score. So it's happened before. History can repeat itself. We just talked about it last week with Kansas State and nearly repeated itself. They could do it again, and maybe this is a game where they can take it to the next level. This Oklahoma Sooners team is not that number 2 Oklahoma Sooners team that Tulane pushed a couple years ago. This is a team that's very beatable, even at home in Norman.
That was a Tulane team, too, that went 2-10 that year. And then were able to rewrite history, flip the script, and, have that magical 10-2
They've had some pretty good years since then,
Yeah, I would say. So they've found their footing, and even with the new coach, it's the John Summerall era, but they're not missing a beat. So we'll see how things are going. But, Kyle, another game that both of us made the argument last week. You said
I did
that South Florida had the opportunity to go and catch Alabama off guard.
Yep.
And talk about look at these fans.
They're
caught off guard.
Yep, they're off guard.
I would say the final score of this game does not indicate how close this game really was. I mean, if you just go look at the box score or just look at the numbers, people are like, oh man, I put out a tweet saying, man, I love college football. South Florida giving Alabama everything they have on the road in Tuscaloosa. And I'm getting fans, tweeting at me, nothing about football. And I'm like, well, did you watch the game? Because it was literally a 1-point game until 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They did give them everything they had. And I think, it's amazing to think Byron Brown, quarterback for the Bulls, is, awful as he played on Saturday. Let's face it, as bad as he played, the fact that they kept things that close for that long, it was shocking.
It was shocking. It was. And that's the type of game that a quarterback like Brown will stay up at night and lose sleep over, because his defense did exactly what they needed to do. Mac Harris was a player possessed. He was all over the sideline to sideline defensively. I loved what they did. Knox and Grammatica had their help on special teams with the forced fumble and the fumble recovery at the start of the second half. Yet the offense could not close the deal with only 7 points off those second half turnovers. So when Alabama left the door open, the number 4 team in the country leaves the door open, the best player on offense, arguably, and Byron Brown, finishes with 103 passing yards. He had 108 on the ground, so I'll give him that. I thought he used his legs efficiently. I thought he helped them push down the field when they absolutely needed it up until the final 10 minutes of the ball game. But when you finish with a completion percentage of under 45% and you get sacked 4 times as well, it's not going to look good. And I think this is the type of game that you have to grow from, because it's not the end of the season for Byron Brown. He still has everything goal-wise, the college football playoff, whatever it ends up being, conference championships, that is all in front. They could go to a bowl. They could do all sorts of their yearly goals. This one game was just an opportunity that was given by the defense, given by special teams, and the offense didn't hold up their end of the bargain. And I said that last week. And when I was talking about this game, the offense would have every opportunity to help beat Alabama. And we didn't make the call like you did moments ago with Tulane beating Oklahoma. Nobody made the call that Alabama was going to lose to South Florida. But I think both of us thought it was going to be a game. And it was certainly a game going into the fourth quarter. Alabama was on the ropes. And if you don't believe me, the picture at the beginning of the segment certainly tells that tale. Listen to Joe Tessitore on the call of that game. That's a guy who has called some of the biggest games in college football, and he was just as emotional, just as excited about the game in the fourth quarter as any other game he's ever called in his entire life, because of how good of a game it was. up until that fourth quarter. Credit to Alabama. Credit to DeBoer and company because they took care of business at home by closing. That's what South Florida can learn from in this occasion. You got to close when you have those opportunities, and they just didn't do it in week 2.
Now, let me ask you, Brown, earlier in that game, he had 3 deep shots that he didn't execute, 2 in a row that he threw to freshman Xavier Brown.
I do not envy that film study early on.
So does a quarterback, in your eyes, when he makes those mistakes and he's that off target, is that a mental thing at that point? I mean, he finished his, like you said, 103 passing yards. He rushed for more than he passed. Is he in his head a little bit, or was it just, execution down the stretch?
I think it's different for every quarterback. I think each quarterback kind of deals with their own demons whenever it comes to a lapse in one element or one area of their game. With Byron Brown, we've known, and he's told us before, he wants to be a better pocket passer. He wants to have better footwork, better completion percentage, and be able to throw and show the arm talent. He's got a cannon, but you got to have the accuracy if you really want to take it to the next level. So with Brown specifically, after missing the first one, maybe that was a technical issue. Maybe that was fundamentally he just missed the throw, and that happens in football. Nobody's perfect, right? But after that, you got to flush it. You cannot sit there and let that one incompletion beat you twice. And it seemed like it did. It seemed like the confidence level went from here to here, just over a couple of incompletions.
Not what we're used to from him.
Not what we're used to. He's a confident dude. He is a confident quarterback, and he should be. He's uber talented, which is why going into the week, I think we looked at it and said, this guy has an opportunity to lead a charge and beat Alabama. Unfortunately, his team played the level that maybe even above the level that we anticipated, but he just didn't hit that mark. He's got a chance to rectify that and turn that around immediately. I mean, this week against Southern Miss, here's a great chance. I just said you can't let one bad mistake beat you again. Don't let Alabama beat you twice, Southern Miss. Turn things around and put it on Southern Miss. To take the lessons that you learned in the loss to the Tide. Take the lessons in that fourth quarter and turn it around and beat a Southern Miss team that's absolutely beatable. They don't have Frank Gore Jr. running the football anymore. Byron Brown has a chance to bounce back big. He could put up 350 yards passing and 100 yards on the ground in this game, and I think it still won't be enough because Byron Brown's going to be out for blood over these next 4 games. Southern Miss, you got a chance to get a ranked win at home in Tampa against the Miami Hurricanes. And then you've got 2 really tough conference matchups that we're going to talk about in a couple weeks at Tulane, and then you welcome in Memphis. We've already hit both of those 2 teams in the show for good reason. South Florida has a chance to make a statement over these next 4 weeks, and it starts this week in Hattiesburg.
A grueling schedule. They can't look ahead because, if they do, this is a Southern Miss team that can catch teams off guard. They've done it before, especially in this conference, beating Tulane. I keep going back to Tulane, but, it was that magical season. Tulane started 3-0, and then Southern Miss comes in and somehow can beat them. So I do think, this is a team. Will Hall, Southern Miss head coach, is going to have his guys prepped, but on the other side for South Florida, this is a get-right game for them. They've got to get it right. I think what Alex Golia is going to be looking for from his guys is playing a full 4 quarters of football, because that's what was missing in that game against Alabama.
That's exactly right. You had 3 quarters of it taken care of. Best game of the year that you could possibly do, but you got to finish. And there's a reason why the money is made in the fourth quarter. And South Florida couldn't get it done. Maybe they'll do so this week against Southern Miss. All right, moving on. The Army Black Knights, welcome to the American Conference. They get their first ever American Conference win, a big-time dub. There you go, victory for the Black Knights. 24-7 over Florida Atlantic, our first conference matchup of the year. We mentioned it last week. Discipline, the big offensive line for Army, and they utilized that early on. 8 plays, 80-yard drive to open the game. It looked like Florida Atlantic had their heads spinning in circles because the option was there. Maybe it was a shotgun handoff. Maybe it was a straight draw from the quarterback. No, how about let's throw it for 44 yards over the top? And oh, by the way, a holder can score touchdowns too.
Right? I mean, some of all 3 phases of the game were just clicking on all cylinders. And really, offensive coordinator Cody Worley, give that man a round of applause for what he dialed up and drew up, whether it be, Noah Short, he just ran around this Florida Atlantic Owls defense all day long. His personal best rushing game, 102 yards on 6 carries in the first half alone.
What about the quarterback running downfield to set a block, and he got decleated, but who cares? He's setting blocks because he says, I know it's an option game, but look at the quarterback here. Taking off, running, and he's not just running, he's head hunting. Look at this. Ready? Boom.
Woo!
He takes a lick.
Love to see it.
But that's teamwork. That's discipline. That's what Army football is all about.
Yeah.
And they showed it.
Yeah, I think the Black Knights played to their personnel. They play to their strengths, and that is what Jeff Monken is showing here. I keep going back to Noah Short, but I think Army's rushing numbers overall too. You look at that, 405 to 42.
Yeah.
405 to 42. That is
good.
Army football for you right there. That's the triple option. And being able to, prepare for a team, Tom Herman and these Florida Atlantic Owls, I mean, a rough start to the season, having to go on the road first, Michigan State, and then you get to go right into week 2 and have to deal with figuring out Army and game planning for them. They have some things to fix there down in Boca Raton, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think they played well in week 1. We mentioned that in last week's show, but you give up 16 points against Michigan State. You don't really have any rhythm on offense, though. You've only scored 17 points in your first 2 weeks. Of course, you're 0-2, so there's a lot that you got to figure out if you're Florida Atlantic offensively. Tom Herman's been in plenty of programs that have had success on the offensive side of the ball, so that's what they're going to have to find. And I think at least right now they didn't have the depth, they didn't have the discipline, they didn't have the physicality to stick with Army, and Army flexed their muscles a little bit in this matchup on the road. The triple option, that travels. The gun option, that travels, and you saw that work to perfection. Credit to the Army Black Knights. They did everything they needed to do to outrun. 405 to 42. They were almost outrushed by 400 yards. 400 yards. That's an unbelievable outing. Well done by Army.
Well, we haven't really analyzed and gone in depth about that trick play too. I mean, that caught me off guard. Watching that, I'm like, who would have thought? And we'll be breaking that down maybe later. We'll see it. We'll see where it ranks in our top plays.
Here it is right here. Look at this. Whoop. Get off to the races, young man. Why not? Take it to the house. I love the vision.
What?
And just seeing somebody wear number 99 and scoring touchdowns.
And the fist bump in the air, the celebration with the teammates, man, it doesn't get much better than that.
Those Army uniforms are sweet, too.
Yeah, very,
the all
very
black.
Nice.
That's intimidating. I don't want to go up against Army ever just because I don't want to get run over. And sure enough, Florida Atlantic experienced that this week. But whenever they have the all black uniforms and they're blacked out like that,
yeah,
I'm out of the way.
Military academies, it's hard to get much better than that.
I would not be surprised if we're looking 5, 6, 7 weeks down the road and we're doing this show and we're looking at Army at the top of the American standings. I don't think I'd be shocked.
Okay.
I really like this team. And it's not only because of what they can do offensively. Their defense is nasty. And they get after it. They've got some physicality on defense, too. And they fly to the football. They have some speed. I like their corners on the outside because just because Army doesn't want to throw the football doesn't mean they can't defend the pass. And they certainly can. So I am impressed with the Army Black Knights early on. Now, of course, we're 2 weeks in. They've got a long way to go. Got an off week this week, just as Navy does. And we're going to see where they end up taking them as the year goes along. But they're a good football team.
Well, okay. So if they are at the top of the standings, I mean, that would catch probably a lot of people off guard.
Sure.
I would say, these were Army and Navy both off to hot starts so far this year. Definitely two teams that, when you look at the preseason media poll, many people didn't have them up there. So good to see them getting a good start in the American and, for Florida Atlantic going to need to bounce back. But, switching gears, we talked about Tom Herman being, an offensive guru. They'll find their stride. Well, another offensive guru in this conference, North Texas head coach Eric Morris.
Yeah.
What a big opportunity he has this weekend. The North Texas players are celebrating on the defense this year, getting some turnovers, getting to celebrate. Look at that turnover belt.
Yeah. You know what that is?
Tell me.
You know what that celebration is?
No. What is it?
Have you ever heard of a guy named Austin? Austin. Have you ever heard of an Austin before?
No. Austin.
What about a Stone? Have you heard of a Stone?
Austin.
Not Stone Austin. I'm trying to lead you in the right direction.
Okay, help me out here.
Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Okay. Yeah,
you know who
yeah.
Stone Cold Steve Austin is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the belt.
Stone Cold Stunner. Oh,
Yeah.
not the belt.
No.
Not the belt.
Okay.
Morgan.
No.
We gotta brush up here on your WWE.
I was gonna
Not
say
your-
something
not
that
your thing.
not my
You're more a
thing.
football gal.
Right? Yeah.
More
Every
of a
other sport
gridiron.
except WWE.
Okay. Stone Cold Steve Austin is a movement. He is the man. He is the Stone Cold
Thank you for
Stunner.
educating me here.
No, his celebration, he gets up on the ring, he gets up on the corner, and he smashes the beers together.
Okay.
And that was a North Texas custom beer. I think it was water in a can.
I would
is
hope
all
so,
it was.
right?
But it was Rich Tejada, and he jumps up there. You know why they did it?
Why?
And why they made the ode to Stone Cold Steve Austin?
Tell me.
That man played linebacker for the North Texas Mean Green back in the 1980s. He's a North Texas legend. Him and Dr. Phil, they need to start a podcast. Maybe they want to come on the All-American podcast. That'd be the most American episode of the All-American podcast you could ever get if Stone Cold Steve Austin and Dr. Phil want to come hang out.
You having
Come
some
on
stuff
now.
in common with these guys.
Why
North
not?
Texas
Why
grad.
not?
Yeah.
North Texas. They did everything they needed to do.
I'll slide into their DMs. We'll see if we can get them on.
You'll have a better chance, no doubt. I think with North Texas and SFA, it wasn't pretty the whole time. And they lost a couple guys on the offensive line, but they're off to a 2-0 start for the first time since 2018. They have a little bit of that 2018 feel to it. They won this game 35-20 over SFA. They got up early and then kind of played with their food a little bit as the game went along. But I want to take you back to 2018. Week 1, they defeated SMU 46-23. Week 2, they defeated Incarnate Word, a team that was actually coached by one Eric Morris, who's now the head coach at North Texas. That was a 58-16 final score. What did they do in week 3? They went on the road. They faced an Arkansas team out of the SEC, and they absolutely beat them down. They took the Razorbacks to town. 44-17 was the final score in that game. This time around, they win big in week 1 over South Alabama, put up 56 points on the board. Chandler Morris and the warden, Damon Ward Jr. was off to a great start. He had 230 yards last week. And then they come back and they beat SFA, a team that they should beat out of the FCS. They've got a week 3 matchup with the Texas Tech Red Raiders out in Lubbock, a team that's been struggling so far. ACU and company took them to overtime in week 1. They did not look good against Wazoo last week in Washington State. I'll talk more about this later, but you made a call early. I think I'm going to have to make a call later in the show.
Okay. Well, I like the parallels that you're drawing here. And
Why not?
Again, this is personal for Coach Morris, right? He gets to go coach at his alma mater.
Yeah.
He played wide receiver there, and then he coached there and happened to coach a pretty good quarterback in the NFL now. I think, everyone might have heard of him, Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. And then Cliff Kingsbury, the head coach there, at the time. So for a guy like Eric Morris, he wants this win, and these players do too. This is the first time, like you said, since 2018, this team is 2-0. But it's also the first time in the Eric Morris era that I noticed that the defense finally outperforming the offense. I mean, you rattled off some offensive names there early, but I think what I was most impressed by was the fact that their defense really stepped up and showed what they were capable of in this game. Rich Tejada broke the pass breakup record and really sets a standard for this defense. And I think if they can continue to play complementary football, North Texas, they're going to be one to be reckoned with once we get into conference play here.
Yeah, their offense is not anything to worry about. I think even though they've got some guys banged up front, that offense and the excitement level brought by Eric Morris and company is going to be there regardless, because that's the system. That's the scheme that he's put in place. They get the football out quick. They rely on their receivers to have some yards after the catch. And Chandler Morris just does a phenomenal job. I mean, he's a really good quarterback. At the end of the day, though, defensively, it hasn't been one of those things you can write home about for North Texas, at least over the last couple of years. Last year, they were statistically the worst defense in the FBS.
Yeah,
they're not that this year. They are not that. They've gotten bigger up front. They still have some talent on the outside. They've got 2 corners that they really do trust, Rich Tejada being one of them. They've got guys that they can trust on the outside, but the front 7 is a bigger monster to deal with, I think, for opposing teams when they face North Texas. If they are going to have some success, they got to hold Texas Tech under 35 points.
Why?
That's
Why
it.
that number?
Just because I think North Texas will put up 35
Okay.
points. I have no worries about how the Mean Green will look offensively going into Lubbock. And especially with, I mean, ACU put up 51 points against them in two weeks ago, and then we saw what Washington State did against them this past week. North Texas could put up 40 plus. You got to hold Texas Tech. You can't get in a boat race.
Mm-hmm.
You got to steal a couple possessions, which they did against SFA. You got to steal a couple moments of momentum. If that's the case, and I guess it kind of plays to your key of complementary football. The offense is going to take care of business. As long as the defense does their job and steals a couple wins, I think they're going to have a chance at winning in Lubbock this week.
I do challenge Chandler Morris and hope that he can play better than he did in week 2, though. Because, I mean, if you look at his numbers, I mean, he finished with a 22.3 QBR.
Yep.
He was 26 of 44. He had the 4 touchdowns, pretty nice, but also 3 interceptions. So a little bit of concerns with what we saw from him. And there was a little bit of from week 1 to week 2. I didn't think he looked quite as sharp, but we know what kind of a talent he is and expect him to get back to what we saw more from him in week 1 versus what we saw against that SFA.
So kind of along those same lines, I want to go into how about an underappreciated performer so far? And this could be anything under the sun. It could be a coach, it could be a player, it could be a unit, it could be a team. I don't really care. Wide open at the end of it. Underperformer so far in the American Athletic Conference, who you got?
Well, we've talked a lot about Army, and I think Navy would get a little bit mad if we didn't mention them, right? We got to highlight Army. Navy is the team that I want to highlight and talk about because this Navy offense with Blake Horvath at the helm, they're clicking on all cylinders. Look, I know their first 2 teams, these first 2 weeks, they play Bucknell, an FCS opponent, but they put up 49 points. Then they faced Temple, a conference game, put up 38 points. Last year, Navy only scored 30-plus points twice all of last season.
Yeah.
This offense last year, I had them a couple times. It did not look good. So they have gotten some things figured out. I think Blake Horvath is the answer. And, his numbers from Saturday, it's never about the Navy passing game. It's about what is the quarterback for Navy going to do rushing. And he had on 15 carries, 122 yards, averaging over 8 yards a carry, broke off for a 62-yard run. Just absolutely incredible. He also has that compliment with his running back, Alex Teska, who looked pretty darn good too. So let's give Navy their flowers too, because, like I said, if we're talking Black Knights, the midshipmen, they need their respect as well.
We got both helmets showcased. You see it over there on the left side of your screen. You got the Army helmet up there. You got the Navy helmet down below. You got all sorts of the military academies who both won a conference game this week. I love it. I really do.
Okay, turning the tables.
Yeah.
Who's your underappreciated?
Give me East Carolina's defense.
Okay.
Listen here. East Carolina allowed 17 points combined in their first 2 games. Of course, Blake Harrell in his 5th season as the defensive coordinator with the Pirates forced at least 1 turnover in 41 of the last 45 games. They know how to find the football. They've had a defensive touchdown this year back in week 1 against Norfolk State. They're currently ranked 12th nationally in total defense, allowing just a smidgen over 200 yards per game. And then they have 15 defenders with at least a half a tackle for loss so far this season. They share the love. They have some depth, and they run sideline to sideline. If you hear me say that, that's because I'm a fan of really good linebacker play. And I think the ECU second level is as deep as it gets when it comes to linebackers. Speed-wise, build-wise, strength-wise, they have some versatility. They can have some delayed blitzes. They have some guys that can drop back in coverage. I love the way that ECU has looked so far. Kudos to Blake Harrell. Kudos to the ECU Pirates, because right now they look like one of the more dominant units, defenses in the American right now. They'll have a tough test this week. They got a chance to try and continue that against App State, a team that traditionally can put up some points. I'm going to say East Carolina is my most underappreciated performer so far. All right, upcoming schedule. We've got a big week ahead in week 3 of the American Athletic Conference. Got some big power matchups too. Look at that at the top of the screen. Oklahoma State and Tulsa.
I wish I wasn't working Saturday, because I know where I would be. I would be on my couch having multiple screens. This is one of those weeks where you need at least 3 screens involved.
Yeah, I'm going to be planted on the couch all day long with the triplets. We're going to be hanging out. It's going to be great. North Texas, Texas Tech. That might be the first game that I turn on alongside with Oklahoma State and Tulsa, Memphis, Florida State. Those are all noon kickoffs, Central or Eastern time, 11 a.m. Central time. We talked about Tulane. You think they've got a chance? We'll talk about that matchup again in a moment. And then as we flip the page, how about Arkansas and UAB? That's a sneaky fun game. A little South Florida rivalry with Florida Atlantic and FIU. That's a former matchup that used to be a conference game in Conference USA. Rice and Houston, talk about former conferences, former Southwest Conference. A little crosstown rivalry down in HTX.
Playing for the Bayou Bucket and Rice last year. They won that for the first time in years, so they're going to want to try to retain that, that's for sure. And I think they have a little bit of a shot. I mean, again, a team that didn't look great in week one, taking that L, but bounced back, and Mike Houston's squad, they'll be ready.
You have high expectations for Rice, too. I think you had talked about it.
I did, going into the season, which is, I think, is why I was so disappointed in what I saw from them in week one. Yeah, I mean, losing wide receiver Luke McCaffrey, I think you didn't realize how big of a blow that was for them. But you get E.J. Warner.
I'm just saying, Luke McCaffrey, or the Luke McCaffrey-less Rice Owls had more trouble than the Christian McCaffrey-less San Francisco 49ers.
That was impressive.
Come on now. I mean, we got a little bit going on here.
Those McCaffrey genes.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. All right. What about biggest win? I want you just talked about Tulane. Are you going to stick with Tulane here in this point?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for me, when I look at the schedule, that would be the biggest win in my eyes that is most likely to happen. That's most likely to happen. Now, if we're taking a look at the schedule and what would be the biggest win for the American, I think point blank in general.
Okay.
How about something else going on in Oklahoma? Let's say, I mean, Tulsa having the opportunity to host Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
A team that beat Arkansas, playing UAB this weekend, beat Arkansas in double OT there in Stillwater last weekend. Could there be a little bit of that hangover effect? Could Tulsa surprise people this weekend? I'm not saying it could happen. I'm not saying it will happen, but I'm saying
you should say it.
The Tulsa fans would love me if I said it. I mean,
come on.
All right.
Why not?
Tulsa's going to beat Oklahoma State this weekend.
We got 2 bold predictions from Morgan in one show. I love it.
Cam Benjamin, he really impressed me last week, playing every snap, 131 yards, 6 receptions. The biggest problem that Tulsa's going to face this weekend is going to be, can they stop Ollie Gordon? And what are their trenches? What are their lines going to look like matched up against Oklahoma State? That's my question. But hey, anything can happen, right? It's college football. We saw it last weekend with Notre Dame and NIU. So this is going to be the surprise of the weekend, the game that everyone's going to be surprised talking about when everything's said and done.
You're going to be walking in like Stone Cold Steve Austin into the studio next week. If they end up pulling it off, you're going to have like a strut to you. It's going to be
I can't believe you just talked me into a hot take. But okay, so now let's see. Make yours.
See, here's the thing. If we're talking biggest win over the weekend, what would be the biggest win, a likely win? I'm going to say there's a lot of teams that have really tough matchups. I think it's going to be tough for Memphis to win, and it's kind of like what we had talked about earlier. Florida State's desperate. They're 0-2. I don't know if they're going to fall to 0-3. Tulane's going on the road against a really good Oklahoma team that didn't look great last week. They're going to look for a rebound. UAB's playing Arkansas. UTSA's playing number 2 Texas. Rice is playing Houston. But then I keep looking at it, and I said it last week, this is not going to be a show. I know I'm a North Texas alum, and I'm a proud Mean Greener, but I'm not going to pub up North Texas unless I think it's fair. It's fair this week. This is a 2-0 North Texas team going up against a Texas Tech team that has not looked very good. Devastating loss last week to Wazoo. Joey McGuire and the head coach of the Red Raiders is trying to find out any sort of defensive answer, period, because their offense isn't bad. But neither is North Texas's. North Texas has a really good shot to go and win in Lubbock. So I'll say they do it. And I don't think if North Texas can win the turnover battle, I don't even think it's a close game. I think North Texas beats Tech by multiple possessions.
How many?
If they win the turnover
final
battle.
Score prediction? Give me a score prediction.
Final score. Because it's going to be high scoring.
Okay.
I would say, I'm going to say 45-28.
Okay.
45-28 North Texas.
I like it. It's
on
kind
the
of
road.
It's a safe pick, though.
Yeah,
It's a little
it is a safe pick.
safer than my
Yeah,
Tulsa,
you went a
Oklahoma.
little more out on the limb.
I think some wild things are going to happen in Oklahoma this weekend. In
It
the
could
state
be.
in general, right?
Yeah,
Tulane
right.
up there.
Tulane.
Yeah.
Hey, how about that? Yeah, that would
That
be the American owns Oklahoma.
And our commissioner Tim Pernetti, he's going to be at both those games this weekend. So let's see.
That must be nice.
Let's see if he can bring
That
some of that
sounds
good
fun.
luck.
Can I come, Tim?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see. All right. We've got plenty more to come here on the All-American podcast, including our second guest of the day, first student athlete guest of the day, Mario Anderson Jr. joining us.
Looking forward to it.
They send a man in motion behind the quarterback. They give it to Anderson, looking to turn the corner. Gets to the 15, to the 10, to the 5, into the end zone. Touchdown Tigers, breathing room 2, 20-7.
And there he is, Mario Anderson, smashing the rock after the Memphis Tigers' big win. He can do it all from on the field as a running back, and with that sledgehammer, we now have the pleasure to welcome him right here into our studios as well as a special guest. Mario, it's great to see you. I got to ask, was Saturday the first time you ever used a sledgehammer?
It definitely was, yes, ma'am.
What was that like, having that in your hands, getting to be part of this Memphis tradition? And I understand, on a more somber note, to do that in honor of your teammate Sutton Smith, who we saw him leave that game, season-ending injury in the first game. What was that moment like for you to be a part of that tradition?
It meant a lot. Usually the person who slams the rock has, I guess, a high impact on the game. And before that game started, Sut, he sent a message to the group chat and just was wishing us good luck and everything. And, I know that he wished he could be out there. So me and the other guys in the running back room, we really keyed on playing this game for him, not only for the season, but, not only for that game, but, dedicate the season to him as well. So just being called up in front of my peers, my teammates, and everyone to be able to, everything that we put on display for that game and be able to, smash the rock, it really meant a lot to me.
Yeah, and you did a phenomenal job not only at smashing the rock, but also finding a way to smash the Trojans as well throughout and gash them in the run game. Tell us about what went right in that ball game for you guys, the blocking up front, the offensive output, putting up 38 points against a quality opponent. How did it all unfold?
I really feel as though it started on Sunday after the North Alabama game. We come into the building, have, corrections or whatnot, walk through, just figuring out, what we could have done better, and prepare for the next week. So after one game and we talk about corrections and stuff, that week is over with, and we're facing the next opponent. So just being able to, prepare every single day from Sunday all the way to Saturday morning and, keep the preparation going as a unit, I feel as though that's really what carried over, just the preparation and the hard work that we put in all season.
Well, we know the run game, it's so important for that offensive line to create those gaps and holes for you to do what you did on Saturday. And this is an offensive line that had 4 or 5 new guys coming into this group and getting them to be able to mesh. What have you seen from your offensive line in how quickly they've been able to gel for you to have the type of success that you've been having so far this season?
Well, one, I think that speaks a lot of volume, not only on the offensive line, but the coaches as well, because, you have to bring in great high-value character players out the transfer portal. As we know in today's college football, the transfer portal is crazy, including myself. The offensive line is, full of older guys with a lot of experience from all different places all over the country. So just being able to, the guys be able to be mature and pick up the scheme very fast, even though there's some guys on the line like X and Jonah who's been here for years, help those guys, not only them, but just, everyone, to be honest, because as they move, the offense moves. So just being able to, be mature and, be able to gel together quickly, I think that was the biggest thing, just, being an older group.
It hasn't taken you very long to gel with your new ball club as well. You spoke to it there a little bit and how important it is to hit the transfer portal and find some quality talent in the portal. What stood out to you about this Memphis program and now some of the goals that you hope to achieve in 2024?
I mean, everything about Memphis, to be honest, I know we're considered a G5 program, but we have just about everything that a P5 program has, if not. Um, and the coaches, it's a lot of experience with the coaches, the lineage of running backs that's came here way before me. That really spoke to me, and just how blunt and frank Coach Silverfield was when we first connected and got on the phone. I felt like it was real genuine, real, real. Everything was real. That's the best way I can put it. And I felt like ultimately this was the best situation for me possible.
Your story has been tremendous. You think about what you did, walking on as a Division II player, 2019 to 2022. You have 5 running backs in front of you at Newberry. Then 2023, you're playing in an SEC team for South Carolina. Now, of course, at Memphis. But, what really, when you look back on your journey, what was the number one thing that helped you to have the success and really be able to have this type of story and show other young players, hey, I can do it, I can make it, and you can too?
When every year, it's always like a single person that gets in the spotlight for their success and everything that they do or whatnot. But honestly, if Coach Knight wouldn't have took that chance on me and given me that $500 worth of scholarship money to be able to walk on and be able to be a young man in his program, I wouldn't be here today. Those teams that, I've been blessed to be part of, to where we won conference championships at Newberry and D2, we had a lot of guys on that squad who, some of them signed pro, but all of us was just really good football players. And, I wouldn't be here without those previous seasons and those guys being able to help me and helping like a stepping stone for me to get here. So, but every year, what I do, me, my Uncle Sam, which is my mom's brother, and my trainer, Jamie Fordham, every year, good, bad, ugly, we go over the tape, we, assess everything and just, pinpoint everything that I needed to work on for the season, the upcoming season, the all season. And not like, unlike D1, D2 schools, we wasn't there during the summer. So, I had to focus on the weight room, which Denny McDaniel and Joey Shepard at Stratford High School, they allowed me to be able to come back every single summer. And I was lifting with them in the morning and the high school program. And then, I used to go with my trainer, Jamie Fordham, and work on everything that I needed to work on, including stuff that I did on my own. So I felt like that was a tremendous role in my success and where I'm at today. And I'm very thankful for all the people that helped me to get to where I'm at today. And honestly, I wouldn't be nothing without that $500 worth of scholarship money that Coach Knight gave me from the start.
That's an outstanding story, and a credit to you too from overcoming some of that adversity to get to where you are today, because you are the next lineup of a long line of running backs that have had so much success during their time and then post their time after playing for the Memphis Tigers. Kenneth Gainwell, Antonio Gibson, Tony Pollard, Darrell Henderson, D'Angelo Williams, and I can name more than just that. Those are guys that have been drafted to the NFL and have had success at the next level. And you're next up in that mindset. What does that mean to you to be a part of that lineage and to start writing your story that's just getting started?
It's all God willing. I appreciate that. But, right now I try not to look ahead because, everyone know the NFL is not guaranteed. So the biggest lesson that I learned at a young age was to stay where my feet is at. Yeah. Every single day I try to stay where my feet is at. I try to, help the team as much as possible because, like I said in another interview earlier this week, as a team win, everyone values increases. And that's what I want. I want to see everyone succeed. So not just me and what I can gain from this opportunity, but, the 12-man college playoff. Hopefully we will be able to, tag along into that and really just show the world what Memphis Tigers was building all these years before I even came here.
And you've got a shot to take a step that direction this week against Florida State. What's the key to keeping that momentum going against a tough road opponent in week 3 of the college football season?
Just being ourselves, really keeping the preparation the same, not being too high, staying level-headed, and knowing that, we have our brand of ball that we play, and we have to stick to that. And I think that we've been doing a really good job. Like I said before, the team is full of older guys, and this group is really gelled together. And I think we really trusting each other now. So just playing our brand of ball, being able to stay focused, and Coach Silfield always talk about having those blinders on. And right now, we have the blinders on, so we're not playing. We're not playing the logo. We're not playing, like a nameless, faceless opponent, really, every single week. That's what we worry about every single week. And, we just got to get the job done by any means possible.
Well, Mario, my understanding is you tear it up on the football field, but you also cut hair. And you have a nice, fresh haircut right now. Let me tell you, whose hair do you cut? Do you do your own? Give us some backstory on that.
Well, I appreciate that. I look a little rough right now, but I appreciate it. No, I cut a lot of guys on the team hair. I started off going into my freshman year. As you said, I walked on. So even though my mom and dad was able to help me a little bit with some money and stuff, I didn't want to put that burden on my mom. So, my Uncle Jazz, which is my dad's brother, he used to work in a barbershop. So he taught me like the basics of cutting hair. But I mean, as a barber, like, you're going to have to mess up and cut different strands of hair in order to be able to really be good at it. So I used to start off by cutting hairs for free and just let people know, like, hey, I'm practicing. I want to cut hair. And then each semester going on from my freshman year, I used to charge $5, $10, $20, and then
smart business guy.
It was like at one point I was cutting the city of Newberry. You know what I'm saying?
So who has the best hair on the team?
Who has the best hair on the team? Probably Jamar.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good one. Do you make trips to Dallas? Can you help me out a little bit? What do I need up top here?
We can look at a flight right now. I can come to you right now.
Hey, let's make it happen. We'll get you on the show one day. We'll wait till a bye week. We'll fly you out here. You can cut my hair live on the show. I'm sure our producers would love to clean up that mess in Studio A. I think that would be a phenomenal segment. We'll make it happen. I love it.
Yes, sir.
Well, Mario, thank you for taking the time, or should I call you Super? Super Mario. But we appreciate it. Wishing you the best of luck this weekend. Great game. We're certainly looking forward to it, and best of luck to you guys.
Yes, ma'am. Thank y'all. I appreciate y'all.
So let's see if Mario Anderson Jr. not only can follow up his performance last week with a win this week against Florida State, but let's see if he finds his way into our American top plays of the week, our top 5 plays, Morgan. Let's start things off. How about the ECU Pirates? I was talking about their defense today, but it's the offense that kicks off our top 5 plays of the week. Time winding down in the second quarter. Pirates down by 1 on the road. No problem. Jake Garcia, just throw it up down there. Anthony Smith's going to be down there somewhere with a spinning, twirling, acrobatic grab that puts ECU in field goal range. Unfortunately, they don't necessarily convert on any points in that regard, but a phenomenal grab to start us off on top plays.
Gets a foot in, comes down with it, makes it look easy. Yeah.
It did look easy. That was the thing, is whenever you're watching that game, it kind of stuck out because that game was nitty gritty, especially in the first half. I mean, the first half final score was 7-6 in favor of Old Dominion. It wasn't really until that second half that ECU found some rhythm offensively. Maybe this was enough to spark it.
Well, let's go to 4. Why don't we? From football to football, we head to the Sunshine State. Florida Gulf Coast with its first lead of the night, but South Florida's Jermone Barkley right through 2 defenders, a no-doubter to the upper 90. How about that for his very first career goal? I mean, he just trucks these guys, goes right to it and strikes, finds the back of the net and makes it another play that looks so easy.
Can we just talk about the velocity there? Can somebody get a radar gun out and just clock that? That's an absolute laser. I mean, we're talking heat-seeking missile, upper shelf, top 90. Also, by the way, the name Barkley, that just sounds like a soccer name. Sounds like, what did you call it a second ago?
Football.
The accent, we got to work on that. Let's go to number 3. Back to the gridiron we go. Tie game early in the 4th. Tulane, Darian Mensah sees man-to-man coverage on the tight end, Alex Bowman. all this dude is all he does is catch touchdown passes. He has 4 catches this season. This is his 3rd touchdown of the year, his 2nd of the game. The junior from Red Bank, New Jersey, 6'5", 245. Good luck to Marquez Sigel, who's on the opposite side. He's just 6 foot 197, trying to slow him down. Not going to happen. Double coverage. What a grab. Elevating. Showing off some hands. 6'5" with speed and hands. He's got an awesome future ahead of him.
Look at those ups. Alex Bowman, take a bow. That is a clutch play. He finds himself in the end zone and is just Mr. Clutch for them this season. I love his connection with Mensa. And boy, the Green Wave, they are rolling.
What a snag. What a snag on the gridiron. And like you said, the Green Wave were rolling, but can they pick it up and finish this week against Oklahoma?
Well, let's go to number 2. We've got more women's soccer. Louisiana at Rice. A little backheel pass from her teammate sets Jules Johnston up for this gem. A strike from outside the box sends this ball soaring. Her 2nd goal of the season, absolutely spectacular. Just watch this again.
It was all the footwork.
That's pretty.
It was the footwork that set it all up. She had all the time in the world. She felt like the pressure was going to stay away for a moment. She settled in, got to the right foot, and then just provided an absolute strike to the top shelf. I like it. I love soccer, by the way. Let's keep mixing them in here. I love it. Zach, Matt, great job finding these plays because they deserve to be here. Speaking of deserving to be here, number one play of the week.
What's number 1? What could top that?
Last week, we saw a little trickery from Army and the Black Knights. Now it's their first ever American Conference game. They can bring it out again. Rich DeMarco on the radio call. Take us home because holders are people too.
Straight on between the hashes. It's a fake. Rhodes running left with it to the 25-yard line. Cuts back to the 20. Has the first down to the 10-yard line. And he scores! Matthew Rhodes on the fake field goal takes it in 23 yards, and Army is back on the scoreboard with 13:57 left in the fourth.
Matthew Rhodes, big man on campus. That man should never buy a drink in West Point again. 1, because he serves our country, number 1, first and foremost. Number 2, because he's the conference special teams player of the week, and holders can score touchdowns just like anybody else on the field.
Valid points. Army with trickery 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Let's see it happen. They have a bye this week, so we won't see it happen this week. But Jeff Munkin, keep these plays coming. I like it. The engineering management major engineers a heck of a trick play. And
I like that.
Yeah, there you go. Our number 1 play of the week.
Pieces it together, right?
Love it.
The discipline, the game plan, the
All
strategy.
3 phases of the game.
All dominant in a 24-7 win over Florida Atlantic. That's it for us here on All-American episode number 2, week 2 in the rearview mirror. We've got a big week to talk about when we come back next Wednesday to break it all down for you. Morgan, looking forward to it. As always,
Can't wait.
You will be on the field on the East Coast, right? You're going East Coast this week.
NC State. I've got Louisiana Tech coming to visit NC State. So will the Wolfpack bounce back? We will see. But yeah, another exciting week of college football, week 3. Some big matchups across the board, but really none bigger than what we have in the American.
No doubt about it. And remember, she picked Tulane and Tulsa to win. So all of Oklahoma is going to be hating Morgan Uber by the end of the week unless you live in Tulsa this week. But that's going to do it for us. For Morgan Uber, for Zach and Matt back behind the scenes and everybody that's involved in the All-American podcast, I'm Kyle Youmans saying so long. We will see you next week.
And that's the bottom line because Morgan Uber said so.